Yo, what's up, everybody? Jumping here, and today I want to talk about this Coppa controversy that is going on with YouTube because a lot of people are actually talking about it, and I kind of want to give my take on it. I haven't done a Jumpin's take in a long time. I don't even know if this is what this is going to be, and I'm not sure on how long this might actually be as a video. But the gameplay footage in the background is actually from Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order, and it's going to be from episode 2 of my playthrough of that. So, let's talk about this, because there's been a lot of misinformation out there, and I know that people are really scared and worried about this whole thing, and there are reasons to actually be worried about it, there's no doubt about that. But I kind of want to talk about what I know about it, and kind of break this down so that maybe you guys can have a better understanding of what's really going on here, because it's actually quite a big deal. There's no doubt about that. But, okay, so if you don't know what this COPPA law is, it's the Children Online Protection Act, and I don't really want to break it down, fuck that. I mean, here's the deal. This video is not meant for children. I'm just putting that out there. So I just want to make that clear. And I do feel like people might need to start putting disclaimers up on their videos or also on their channel especially. I think that's the most important thing. If you're going to take anything from this video, if you do YouTube in any way and you're worried about this, I would say that in your channel description, you need to make it very clear that this is not for children. Now, under this law, children are defined as under the age of 13. So if they're 13 plus, it's okay. But if they're under the age of 13, you can run into some problems. But I think the biggest story here isn't really about the FTC. I am a libertarian. I am a very strict libertarian. I do not like government. I do not trust government. And I am not a big fan of departments of government. So I don't really like the FTC, but at the end of the day, I feel like the FTC has been very vilified in this, which is kind of not as deserving as YouTube itself. I think YouTube itself needs most of the blame here. I'm going to really talk about that. We're going to have to wait and see what happens with the FTC, because as of right now, I'm really not worried at all. And for the vast majority of people on YouTube, I would say that they really have nothing to worry about when it comes to the FTC. YouTube, on the other hand, and Google, I'm not too sure about. So let's go ahead and talk about this. Now, YouTube got into a bunch of trouble here, and they are at fault, and it's very clear. Basically, when it comes down to the COPPA law, this was passed in 1998, and it's all about protecting the privacy of children. Now, initially, back in 1998, with the internet, what it was really all about was websites and different online things couldn't collect information from children, like their names, their address, different personal information. They didn't want children giving websites that information, and then predators could get a hold of that. It's just bad. So that makes complete sense, and everybody agrees that that's definitely something that we should protect. Like, the FTC is all good for that. But, later on, they realized that that really wasn't the problem. What they decided to go ahead and do, they amended it. I think this was in 2013. They went ahead and changed it to include cookies. Now, cookies are all over the internet. Companies will collect cookies on you, and then they can get your personal information, mainly like the things you like and all that type of goodness. And then they can use that to advertise to you. That's why, if you look something up on Google, and then you start seeing on Facebook all of a sudden that you're getting ads for the thing that you were looking up before, it's all cookies doing that. That's how it works. So the FTC is like, well, with the COPPA law, we want to make sure that children aren't going to be affected like this. So we don't want websites and social media and all this stuff out there to be collecting cookies on minors, mainly children. Like I said, I guess it's okay if they're over the age of 13 with this law, but in terms of anyone under the age of 13, they do not want companies collecting cookies on them and then advertising to them and getting information, because there's a lot of information that cookies can provide. So, that's just the reality of it. And it kind of does, of course, violate the COPPA law. Now, here's the problem with YouTube. YouTube was set up where if you're going to make an account, they don't give you the option to display any age under the age of 13. So they were able to pretty much tell the FTC, like, look, we're not violating Coppa because no one on our platform is under the age of 13, and that's just the rule of the platform. Which, of course, doesn't make any sense, and it was pretty obvious that kids were on it, but they got away with it for quite a while. And then recently, there was a bunch of child advocacy groups got together and was like, no, Google and YouTube, they're lying about this. There's plenty of children. There's a lot of data to show that on YouTube, watching YouTube every single week, every single day. And YouTube is collecting cookies on them and then using those cookies to then advertise to them and just collecting data. And they're not supposed to be able to do that. So the FTC went ahead and investigated YouTube on this, and they found that, yes, they were doing this. Now, they went ahead and had a settlement, and this is the important part here. They had a settlement. So the reality is, I don't even know, I don't think anybody really knows exactly how much the FTC would have fined YouTube for this violation if they didn't settle first. But as parts of the settlement, and here's where things really get messed up, they pretty much threw all of their creators under the bus. I mean, that is just the truth of the matter. They said, look, you can go directly after the creators, you can sweep it, you could check it out, and if people are going to violate our new rule, because that was another part of it, we're going to go ahead and set up this new rule where everyone's going to have to set up their videos and say that these videos are either meant for children or they are not meant for children. And if you are lying about that, or if you're violating that in any way, if the FTC sees that and then they catch you doing that, they can then directly come after the creator. And YouTube is kind of off the hook on this. So that's the part of the settlement that, of course, is very alarming because, like I said, they pretty much threw the creators under the bus. More than likely, they would have had a much heavier fine, but they were able to get away with paying less and all this just by going ahead and throwing the creators under that bus. Now, another thing that's also happening is that YouTube is going to use their own bots to go through videos, and then the bots are going to determine if some of these videos are made for children or if they're not. And that is definitely the worst part about this. I'm going to be straight up with you. That is the biggest problem of all, because you shouldn't trust the bots. I mean, that's obvious. Like, the bots are really stupid. Now, I really only got interested in this or concerned at all about this because for the longest time I didn't know about this, but I didn't really take it seriously just because I thought, oh, I'll be good. I'm not worried about it. I kind of understand what's going on with this law, and I think I'll be fine. But then I did see a video from Upper Echelon Gaming, which I don't really watch his channel. I know he does a lot of controversy, different things about gaming or just other stuff. He just covers a lot of controversies, and he plays video games, and he has video games in the background, kind of like this video. Well, they went ahead and they marked his video where he's playing Star Wars, actually. He's playing the same game I'm playing here. And they marked his video as made for children. And then it was manually reviewed. And I think they just manually reviewed it like randomly. I don't really know exactly what happened there. And basically, they said that that video was meant for children. Which, that video was not meant for children in any way. There's absolutely no way that you can watch that and really say that that video was meant for children. But yet they did. Now, because they did a manual review of that, I mean, he's kind of screwed. Because normally, if the bot would come in and then mark a video as for children, you could appeal that and say, I need somebody to look at this. And if a real person comes in and watches it and says, oh yeah, the bot messed up, they can reverse it. But if they agree that, no, this is made for children, that's kind of the end of the appeal there. So you kind of lose options. Now you might be wondering, like, what's the big problem with if your video is marked for children? Now, the biggest thing, of course, is money. I mean, that is the truth. I'm not going to BS with you. I know a lot of people who are talking about this, they normally will say something like, oh, you know, it's all the other problems that happen. I don't really care about the money. That's bullshit. The reality is that the money is going to be dramatically reduced if it's marked for children because no targeted ads will be on that video at all. Now, there can be some ads, but there's estimates of like 60 to 90% of the revenue that you would have made off that video would be lost if it's marked for children because there's no targeted ads. So that's number one problem. But then there's a lot of other ones too, and I do agree that these are really bad. The video is no longer searchable. It's not recommended. You will not have notification bell. You lose all types of perks. If your channel is meant for children, you just lose basically all the perks that you can get on YouTube. And that's really, really messed up. No comments on the video. Now, that's never going to change just because of the whole controversy with the freaking perverts out there on children's videos trying to hit on kids. It was really messed up what was going on there. So they removed the comments on anything they deem as for children, and that makes sense. And that's probably not coming back. But the moment that your video is marked for children, you lose all that stuff. Mainly it's the money, but at the end of the day, like when the video is not searchable, it's not recommended, you kind of killed the potential of that video being very viral. And that can happen where the bots can come in and just deem that your video that might be like your most successful video you've ever made is now for children, and you don't think it is. You're like, that makes no sense. The bot's messed up. If somebody comes in, a manual reviewer, which, all this takes time too, so that just kills you when this is going on. If a manual reviewer comes in and then they also agree that it's for children, you're kind of shit out of luck. That's just the reality of it. And that's really messed up because the FTC would probably disagree with YouTube and the bots. That's the messed up part about this. Now, everybody's freaking out, mainly because there are a ton of channels out there that it's really questionable. Like, wait a minute, these channels are just kind of family friendly. They are for everybody. Videos, like, are they for children? Because they appeal to basically everybody. Anyone can watch these videos. What about those videos? And I know video games is a big part of this because you do have a lot of video games that are appealing to children. Now, I'm a little concerned, especially with YouTube. Like I said, FTC, I'm not really worried about them. I'm going to break that down why. I think that when you're talking about FTC and the Coppa law, there's not really much to be worried about as long as you don't fall into some category of people. But when it comes down to things like, what if a game is rated teen for teen? This Star Wars game is rated teen, okay? It's meant for 13 plus. That's the way it is, okay? And if you're doing a video on it, even if you're not cursing and being vulgar, still, children should not be watching that video. That's just the reality of it. And especially if a game is rated M, like Call of Duty or something like that, you would definitely have an argument in a court case if the FTC did want to take action against you. You could definitely argue that in court and say, look, this video is not meant for children in any way. The game is rated M, and in the video itself, maybe I'm not cussing, but, I'm not really talking to children. I'm not trying to motivate children to watch my video. I can't help the fact that they're watching the video. You definitely have a case for that. But the big problem is that there's a lot of gray areas here. And unfortunately, YouTube has really done very little to help put people's minds at ease here, which I feel like that's the biggest problem of all when it comes to this whole controversy. Now, there's a couple things I want to say. The first thing is, I know that if you watch any of these videos, so you can look this up and find a ton of videos, and some of them are very sad. There are people who are emotional because their channels are definitely channels that are in that gray area. Maybe they're doing action figure collecting or toy reviews, but not for children. They're just doing like a toy collection video, or I don't know, different cards like Pokemon cards or Legos. I know that's a big one. There's a whole Legos community out there that's not really meant for children. It's just meant for anybody who wants to watch it. And you have the video game stuff. Like, what about Mario and Nintendo products that are rated E for everyone? And Mario could be seen as something that is very appealing to children. There's a lot of people who are really scared out there. And I feel really bad for these people because I definitely could tell you that if I was in their shoes, I would feel the same way. I'd be very afraid of all this. And in a lot of these videos people are making, they're talking about how, like, it could be it. Like, it could be over. They might have to stop doing YouTube altogether because they're just afraid of what's going to happen to them. Because one of the things that's out there is that the FTC, if they do come after you, if they do their sweep and they find that, hey, you're violating Coppa, and because of that, and remember, you have every reason as a YouTuber to not want to have your videos marked as for children. You lose a ton of money, you lose the searchability, you lose a lot. So you really don't want to do that. So if you can get away with saying that your video is not meant for children or not made for children, because it's not about what it's meant for, it's about what it's made for. And if your video is not made for children, maybe it's made for general audiences, you have a family-friendly channel, but at the same time, you're not just making videos for kids, then you should be good. But if the FTC came in and they're like going to come after you, people are talking about, yeah, you can be fined $42,000 per video. But the FTC, they did a press conference, and you can watch the whole thing. I recommend watching it. If you're a YouTuber, you should actually watch the whole thing. And in that press conference, people have pulled a lot of clips from there, and they're sitting there and they're saying really messed up stuff. It's scary, man. It is just scary. Like, they're talking about shooting fish in a barrel. YouTube is the barrel. The content creators are the fish. They're coming after the content creators. They're going to hold content creators responsible. And YouTube is not making it any better because they're basically saying to like a lot of people like, yo, this is the time that you should probably lawyer up. Like, when YouTube is telling you that you might need a lawyer, it's freaking scary, man. Like, so you can understand why people are freaking out. They're telling everybody, you have to make the determination. Is your video made for children or is it not made for children? And if you mess up, you could be fined like $42,000. Like, you could have some real serious problem. And people are like freaking out over that, obviously. You know, your channel could be terminated too, by the way. The video could be deleted. You could be in a lot of trouble here. So it's very understandable. But in the actual Coppa law, they do use language in there that can actually provide some clarity. Don't worry about the top line. That's a bit that you might have seen in another video. People have talked about that a bunch, and it's a little bit vague, it's a little bit confusing. But if you actually look at the final line there, they basically say that they can look at your material, in this case your channel or your video, and determine based on the audience and based on the intent if you are trying to actually market towards children. So a great example would be like PewDiePie. Is his channel meant for just kids, or is his videos meant for kids? Plus, what is the actual audience of these videos or his channel? Because I would bet that the vast majority of his audience is 17, 35-year-old. I mean, that seems to be like the majority of most people's channels to begin with. So, I mean, like, that's kind of very important there. That just means that in the actual law itself, they use language that will actually help a lot of people out. Like, if people were aware of this, I think that a lot of people's minds would be at ease. If the FTC is going to follow their own law, which they probably will, then most people have absolutely nothing to fear, even if their audience is actually a certain percentage of them might be children. But YouTube, that's another story. Now, this is when things get really messed up. Because of the bots, because of the fact that YouTube will be doing these sweeps. And by the way, that's all voluntary. YouTube did not need to do this. Like, the FTC with their settlement, they're not making YouTube do the sweeps with the bots. They're not making them try to enforce this in any way. Now, there's a really big question here when it comes down to it. When YouTube is going to be doing their sweeps, and they're going to find videos, they're going to say it's for children, and sometimes it'll be wrong. You know, hopefully manual reviews will fix that, but if they don't, the question is, if they are changing, let's say you upload a video, and in your video you say it's not made for children, and you're pretty confident it's not made for children, and then the bot says, it is. If that happens multiple times, can you be facing consequences from YouTube itself? Because one of the terms and conditions with the YouTube policy is that you cannot upload things, or you cannot basically break the law. If you're breaking the law in your videos, then they could terminate your channel for that. So if you violate in their minds, not in the FTC's minds, but in their minds, if you're violating Coppa law multiple times with multiple videos, you keep marking them as not for kids, and they keep saying, no, it is for kids because they're a bunch of idiots, then the question is, can they just say, you know what, we're going to terminate your channel just because you're breaking the law? I mean, I don't know. It's very possible. So I'm definitely really worried about what YouTube's going to do with this, not so much about the FTC. Now, I want to kind of talk about that as well, about how the FTC is going to do their sweeps and why you don't have too much to worry about. Now, the first thing is that I don't know, but I don't think that the FTC is going to be using bots or anything like that to actually do their sweeps. I think that more than likely they're going to be having real people look through YouTube to try to find people who are violating COPPA. So that's one thing. You don't have to worry about the bots making a mistake. Now, unfortunately, there is a possibility that YouTube will suck up to the FTC and say, we got a list here. It's all these people who's violated. We caught them. And here's a list of them. You should check them out. It's very possible that could happen. So if YouTube's making mistakes and they are marking videos that are not made for kids, and then they're saying they are made for kids because they're a bunch of idiots, and then they're going to the FTC when they're about to do their sweep, and they're telling them, like, here's a list of a bunch of people who we have caught. You should investigate them. That is a problem. Like, that is a huge, worrisome problem there. But in terms of the way that we know that the FTC attends on actually going through channels and doing their sweep, they're not probably going to be using bots. They're going to be using real people. And they're using the same guidelines of the way that they investigated YouTube the first time. Now, one thing I really want to talk about real quick is YouTube pretty much snitched on themselves. We know this because the FTC has this on record, that one of the things that they were able to look at and determine that YouTube was full of shit and they were lying about not collecting data on children, that was because YouTube was going to different companies basically bragging and saying that, hey, we are the biggest platform on the planet for children. We have all these kids on our platform and we have their information. We can target your ads. So you're talking about Disney, Hasbro, toy manufacturers, whatever. They're telling them that you give us money and we will put your ads in front of these kids. So it's pretty blatant that they were violating COPPA just because they're doing that, and the FTC discovered this. Now, besides that, another thing that was going on was that they went ahead and did an investigation, and they went through a bunch of different channels, and they found a bunch of different channels that were 100% meant for children. And these channels do exist. They're on YouTube. You can find them right now. And basically, what they were looking at, though, to determine, like, is this 100% made for children? They were looking at the channel description. So a lot of these channels probably have descriptions of their channel, which they're basically self-proclaiming that they are a great children channel. Then they were also looking at the videos themselves. So if you're watching a video and in the video, they're talking in a manner that's really meant for children, where if I was to watch, I would be like, okay, what is this? This is meant for babies. I'm getting off of here. So that was another factor. And then the other factor they were using was they were looking at the ratings of channels. And one way they could do that is because they had that information from YouTube. Now, this information is pretty hidden. There was a time where you could kind of see it, but I don't want to get into that. But there are ratings for channels. So it would be like G, PG, PG-13, or R. So if your channel's rated G, you're making videos that are appealing to children, and in those videos, you're talking in a manner that is obvious that you're trying to talk to children. You're already self-proclaiming in your description that your channel is for children, and they can look at the actual audience. Like, when we look at this information as YouTubers, we can only see like 13 to 17-year-olds. I don't know, at that time, could they actually see the real numbers in terms of the ages? I don't really think they would know them. But they were able to look at that and kind of determine, okay, these channels are meant for kids. So these channels exist on YouTube. There are younger people on this platform, and there's been studies on top of it to determine there's a ton of kids on YouTube. It's pretty obvious. So this is what happened. If they're going to follow those same standards, then if you're making videos for just general audiences, and your description of your channel, your rating of your channel, the rating's a little bit messed up just because a lot of people are family friendly. They're not cursing. They're not doing anything vulgar in their videos. So maybe they are a G, or maybe they're PG. And that's, a shame that, that's a factor, but it is what it is. I don't think that's going to matter much. But like I said, they're looking at the audience of your videos, and they're looking at the manner of your videos. So if your videos are clearly not made in a way that's trying to appeal to children. And in those videos, you're not talking in any special way that is trying to talk to children, or you're talking, in a really fun way that kids would find appealing, but adults would be turned off by that. They are probably not going to look at that and say, okay, this person is in violation. Because in the law itself, it says that general stuff is fine. Because, I want to get back to that real quick because I don't think I really described it much. But if you actually look at it, they acknowledge there are things that children like but are appealing to adults. It's all about how you do your videos. If your videos are made in a way that's really meant for general audiences, then you should be fine. Like, you should have no problem with this. I don't think the FTC is going to come after anyone like that. So, really, at the end of the day, the people who are going to really have to follow this are people who really do have, really kiddie channels that are meant for kids. They're going to have to mark their channels as for kids, because if the FTC finds out these channels are not marked that way, then they could be in trouble. Those are the people that will be coming after. And like I said, they're going to be coming after big fish first. So there are some channels that you could look at a video, right? And you could say that, most, if not all, of the videos on that channel are not meant for kids. But then there might be a couple of videos on that channel that are a little bit questionable. If that is the case, then those videos need to probably be marked as for kids, because that's just the truth of the matter. You don't want to take that risk. But I don't think that just because you're covering something that is potentially appealing to children, you really have a lot to worry about. I'm going to go back to action figures. If you're an action figure collector and your whole channel's about that, I don't think you have much to worry about. Mainly because it would be like saying, okay, this guy is an action figure collector who's buying these expensive action figures. He's talking about them. He's showing them off. And yes, this is appealing to children, but it's also appealing to older adults. His demographics show that, there's some kids watching them, but there's a lot of adults watching them. And on top of that, you want to compare that to someone who is blatantly making reviews of toys. I'll give you an example. There's that one kid, I don't even know his name, but he's making all this money on YouTube. He's the most successful YouTuber in terms of money. But he's a little kid, and he's doing toy reviews. That is really blatantly for kids. That channel, if you watch it, is meant for children. But that action figure guy who's just collecting and showing off action figures and talking about action figures, that's something completely different. I remember there was this one girl, and she was doing a toy collection thing, but her videos were really not meant for kids. They're just meant for pretty much anyone to watch. And yeah, some kids are probably watching it, but they're not made for kids. And see, this is what I'm talking about when it comes to YouTube and how messed up this is. That is that the YouTube bots, they did their sweep, and when it came to her videos, none of her videos were marked for kids. So the bot didn't mark any of them. And that surprised her. So she actually contacted YouTube support and basically asked, hey, did the bot sweep my channel? None of my videos were marked as made for kids, but that was surprising. And YouTube responded and basically told her, yes, the bots swept your channel, but do not rely on the bots. Which is good advice, by the way. Do not trust the freaking bots. But they told her that if any of her videos she was questionable about, that she should contact a lawyer. This is the response. So obviously, when that girl probably had her channel swept, or when she thought her channel was swept, and it came back that none of her videos were made for kids from the bots, that probably would have put a little relief into her. Now, like I said, don't trust the bots, but still, that would be a little relieving. Oh, okay, the bots didn't detect anything. And then she contacts YouTube, and they basically tell her, look, you should probably just get a lawyer. That's scary stuff, it's very confusing. Instead of just saying, look, here's the deal. When it comes down to this law, there are things in the law that you should read, and, that can maybe clear things up a little bit. Maybe point that out about the whole general audience thing and how that works, because that's not being discussed. But the worst thing about this, the absolute worst thing, is that YouTube has gotten away with something pretty sinister here. They had their cake and they ate it too, because YouTube is still going to collect the cookies from kids. That's the whole point here. Like, content creators are not doing this, okay? The content creators are not collecting any data from the people watching their videos. YouTube is the one doing this. And YouTube is going to continue to do this because they have not changed anything about the platform to try to put an end to this. Because what's happening with these kids? Like, how are these kids on these platforms? Because if you make an account, you gotta be 13 or older. Well, there's several ways kids are getting away with this. A, they're making accounts and they're lying about their age. Now, YouTube could address this by making it, when you make an account, there could be some type of age verification system. And then the other thing that kids are doing is that they're not having an account at all. You could be on YouTube and not have an account. That's perfectly okay. Now, the only thing you really can't do on YouTube if you don't have an account, some videos are deemed, mature or age restricted. And those videos you cannot watch if you're not signed in. And then the final thing is a lot of parents are just letting their kids use their accounts. They're like, oh, here, you want to be on YouTube, take it. Take the tablet. As the parent, I'm signed in as an adult, and I'm handing this to my child, and then they can go and watch stuff. Maybe as the parent, I'm putting something on for them, but, who knows what they're clicking on? Like, they could go and watch other stuff. Kids are smart. They figure this stuff out. So that's really what's happening where kids are watching YouTube. So, here's the deal. YouTube is still going to collect the cookies on these kids. So, if they're on the parent's account, they're going to be collecting the cookies from the parents. And I don't know if they can determine just from the viewing activities, like, oh, there's kids watching this. Okay, get those cookies, let's figure that out. I'm not sure on how that works. But same with, like, if you're not signed into an account, they could track you and probably figure out, like, okay, this person seems like a young person. And they're collecting that information. And if people are lying about their age, probably based on your viewing activities, they are collecting data on you and they're going to advertise to you appropriately. So they can figure this stuff out and they're going to continue to do this. So, there are some solutions that they could have came up with to help protect children, like actual real solutions. One is make it so that if you're on YouTube, as a user, you have to be signed in all the time. That's just the new rule. Like, you have to have an account and you have to sign in. And when it comes to making an account, they should have the option to select their real age. So I'm going to give you an example because this makes the most sense. Now, when it comes to Coppa, they cannot collect personal information about kids. So the first question when you go to make an account is, how old are you? And you select a number. If you select a number under the age of 13, that's it. They don't have to collect data on you. They don't have to know your name. They don't have to know an email address. That's probably could be it. Maybe there's some other simple things that they could do, but they can make an account for you that is meant for kids. This is a kid's account. And the moment you make that account, if that account is logged in, that will then make it so that the videos that you will see, the only things you can find on YouTube, or YouTube Kids, whatever, will be videos that are meant for kids. So any video that's been marked for made for kids can be viewed by those kids with those accounts. The other thing is they could put it out on YouTube across the board, some type of message to get it out to parents and say, if you are a parent and you are allowing your child to use your account to actually view YouTube, here are, the way we feel about it. Just have a whole thing about it. Basically, I would imagine they would say something like, we don't really recommend you do that because, your child could see things if they're logged into an adult account that you might not approve of. But if you acknowledge this, if you click on this and say, I accept this, then you understand what we're talking about here. And that way they could literally say, like, they got the parent's consent on this. So, like, if the kid is actually on the parent's account and they're collecting cookies on the parent's account and it just so happens the kid is on that account, then they're kind of in the clear because they told the parents, like, look, this is the reality of it. we recommend that, hey, with our new policy where you can make an account for your kid, just go make an account for your kid. Make sure your kid is signed into that account. And it's going to be great for your kid because now your kid is going to actually see material that your kids should be watching instead of random Jake Paul videos or whatever, that maybe the kids shouldn't be watching. So I think that's such a good solution, and they're not doing any of that. And then finally, have some type of age verification system, something in there to hopefully stop a lot of kids from making accounts and just lying about their age and all that type of information. So if they did all that, I think that would be good for YouTube. But here's the other thing. When it comes down to the cookie thing, and when it comes down to the Coppa law, and the way that it's being used, really, because the reality is YouTube or Google collecting this information so that they could sell it to predators to come after kids? No. They're selling this information to advertisers so that the advertisers can advertise to children. That's what's going on. And you might feel differently about this, but personally, I really don't have much of a problem. Now, I'm not a parent, so I can't really speak on that too much. But I would think, as a parent, I would much rather prefer that my kids are seeing toy ads than my kids seeing alcohol or cigarette ads. I'm just saying. To me, that makes the most sense. So, I don't know. But this also goes back to what I was talking about before, with solutions for YouTube to actually, make the platform better. But they're not doing any of this because, they want to have their cake and eat it too. That's what they're doing, basically. And they're throwing the content creators under the bus with all this. But, one of the examples here is, if your videos are made for children, we know the consequences of that, where it's not good. You lose all this money, you lose all these perks. It's bad. But I can go on Nickelodeon right now, or I can go on Disney, and if I go and watch that stuff, I don't know why I'm watching it, but let's say I'm watching it, I'm going to see a lot of kids' commercials, things that are for kids, because people generally who are watching Nickelodeon are younger and they are advertising to those kids. So, there's not a problem with doing that. And the thing is that I understand, targeted ads, that's bad, whatever. But when it comes to these videos that are made for kids, why not just go ahead and make the ads on those videos, just in general? Things for kids. You could still go to Disney, you could still go to Hasbro and say, look, we have all these videos now on our platform that are made for kids. So the primary audiences for these videos should be children. And we've done this with our system so that, there's a lot of kids now who have these kids accounts and they can only watch these types of videos. And there's a ton of kids on our platform. What we want you guys to do is just, why don't you advertise on all these videos that are made for children? And guess what? Maybe it's not as good in terms of revenue as targeted ads, but I would imagine that's pretty good. It still would be a lot better than what they're talking about now, where you can lose 90% of your revenue. So I don't understand how that would be a problem. And I don't think that would violate any type of Coppa law, because you have set up your platform to help protect children. They're watching kid-friendly material, and then there's advertisements on that material that is meant for kids. And yes, here's the deal. Adults can watch that, but if you're watching that and you're getting kids ads, then the system is working. It's working because they're not targeting kids then. Because you're an adult and you're not just watching kids stuff all the time, and you're getting ads that are meant for kids, which normally you don't get ads like that. I think that would be a much better solution to all this. But anyway, that's enough. I just wanted to kind of give my 2 cents on all this. I watched a lot about it, and I learned a lot about it just because I was interested. It is something that I think people should worry about. I don't want to 100% go out on a limb and say you should trust the FTC. They're not going to screw anyone. It's very possible they could screw people. And that chairman guy was a real asshole when he was talking about the fish in the barrels and all that. That's some scary stuff. So I can understand why that freaks people out. I 100% feel like people could definitely not worry as much about the FTC. We will see what they do. We don't know yet. It could be really, really bad. But I still think that YouTube is going to have some problems with this. But I really kind of put it on YouTube themselves. I think these bots can cause a lot of problems. I think the manual reviews could cause a lot of problems. It's just going to be a headache. We'll see what happens, but as of right now, I'm personally not too worried. I'm more worried about YouTube than I am about the fucking FTC. That is the truth. But that's going to do it. So I would really appreciate if you could like the video for me. Be sure to subscribe for future videos. And I really do hope that everyone has a very nice day. And peace.